Iron Maiden just announced the first dates of their 2026 Run for Your Lives World Tour, going for yet another leg in Europe, which will end on July 11th with a very special concert at the legendary Knebworth House. So today, let's take a look at the very interesting relationship Iron Maiden had with Knebworth throughout the years, which had lasted for at the very least 15, but more like 50 years already, and which may tell us more about what we may expect from the band next year. Here you go. In case you guys didn't know, Knebworth House is not really your average concert venue. This is an English country house built in the 15th century, and from that time until today it belongs to the noble Lytton family, who back in 1974 transformed it to a festival ground. And since then, so for over 50 years now, the grounds of Knebworth House hosted a bunch of iconic openers, including the Knebworth Festival, Sonisphere, and gazillion others, welcoming a range of bands from all over the world, starting with the Rolling Stones and ending with Watain, and thus becoming one of the most legendary British music venues. And by the way, interestingly enough, Iron Maiden's history with Knebworth actually goes all the way back to the very beginning, when on the 21st of August of 1976, young Steve Harris attended the only edition of the Knebworth Fair alongside 120,000 people to see the Rolling Stones, Todd Rundgren, Lynyrd Skynyrd, and a bunch of other bands, of which he wrote a brief entry in his diary back then, which we can see in an Iron Maiden Early Days documentary for like a millisecond. Yeah, I know, I'm a nerd. And by the way, in that same diary, Steve actually wrote that he came back home right after Todd Rundgren because of diabolical conditions, which I guess are related to the whole fact that, once again, the approximate attendance of that festival was close to 120,000 people, which is roughly twice as many people that attended the Sonisphere Festival in 2014. But anyways, despite the whole fact that on the next day after that festival, Iron Maiden themselves were playing one of their early gigs, for which, by the way, the entire band received around £25. I can imagine that back then, young Steve Harris could only have dreamt of one day playing at a stage like that. And little did he know that roughly 50 years later, he would come back to the picturesque mansion in Hertfordshire for the third time, with one of the biggest heavy metal bands to ever walk this earth. By the way guys, super quick, just wanted to point out that only around 30% of the people who watch my videos are actually subscribed to this channel, so if you still haven't done so, and especially if this is not the first Up the Iron series video you're watching here, I would really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing right now. Let's continue building this amazing heavy metal community together.
Just like that.
Fast forward 34 years to the summer of 2010. Iron Maiden had just returned home from the North American leg that opened their Final Frontier World Tour, and their show at the Sonisphere Festival in Knebworth on August 1st was one of the first events of the European leg, right after the epic opener at the O2 Arena in Dublin. Now, keep in mind that this was the second edition of Sonisphere, and thus the promoters wanted it to be bigger, stronger, and more epic than the one in 2009. And so they turned it into 11 three-day events all across Europe, with Iron Maiden headlining the last 3 of those, thus becoming only the second band in the Sonisphere history who had a chance to headline more than one Sonisphere event during 1 year. The second one after Metallica, who happened to headline all 6 of their 2009 editions. But anyways, despite the whole celebration of music and everything rock and roll that was happening during those Sonisphere events, still, 2010 was one of the saddest years in metal history. As just several months before that, in May, the legendary Ronnie James Dio passed away after losing his battle with cancer. And it was during the Sonisphere event when Iron Maiden decided to not stay silent about that. As for the very first time since the last show of the Brave New World Tour in Brixton on March 2002, they decided to include the song Blood Brothers into the tour setlist and dedicated it to the memory of the legendary Ronnie James Dio.
We would like to dedicate this next song
And we've been doing this every night, and it just feels like the right thing to do for this tour, because a great man passed away earlier on this year, somebody we all love. And he was going to be on this tour with us, doing a lot of shows with Heaven and Hell. You know who I'm talking about. We'd like to dedicate the next song, it's called Blood Brothers, to the memory of the late, the great Ronnie James Dio.
And here, of course, it is simply impossible to not draw parallels, as this year we sadly lost yet another Black Sabbath singer, the legendary Ozzy Osbourne. And who knows, maybe in 2026, just like they did 16 years before that, Iron Maiden will honor yet another legend, who, by the way, sadly had never had a chance to perform at the legendary grounds.
Wow, that's cool. That's because we are all blood brothers!
But anyways, next time Iron Maiden returned to Knebworth just 4 years later. Yet their second coming wasn't actually as flawless as the one in 2010.
You'll take my life, but I'll take his tail! You'll buy a musket, but I'll run it through!
On July 5th, 2014, Iron Maiden returned to Knebworth once again. And once again to headline yet another edition of the Sonisphere Festival. And by the way, interestingly enough, back then they did that as a part of their Maiden England tour, which, as we all know, concentrated only on the first 10 Iron Maiden albums. And next year, 12 years later, they will return to the same grounds once again, and once again concentrated only on their first 10 studio albums, yet this time around with their Run For Your Lives tour, which I guess may bring a rather interesting deja vu feeling to everyone who will have a chance to witness both of those shows.
Yeah, unbelievable.
But still, just like back then, they will refuse to actually play the song Deja Vu, which, and I know that I said that a gazillion times before, but I am not tired of repeating this, and I will say it once again. In my opinion, it's simply a crime against humanity. Oh, and by the way, another similarity between these two shows is that the Sonisphere appearance in 2014 was the closing one for Iron Maiden's 2-year-long Maiden England run. And the next year's show will actually be the last one of their 2-year-long European Run For Your Lives tour. And we all, of course, know that the last show of the tour is always a special one. And especially when it comes to Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden's appearance at the 2014 Sonisphere Festival was a truly extraordinary one, in all senses. And it all actually started even before they hit the stage, when Bruce Dickinson joined the Great War display team in a dogfight tribute in honor of the First World War's 100th anniversary, piloting a Fokker triplane above the Sonisphere Knebworth site prior to Iron Maiden's appearance at the festival. And it was actually the second time he did that during that summer, mirroring the same start of the Maiden show at the Download Festival on June 15th. And I don't know about you, but if Bruce Dickinson for some weird reason decides to do that once again next year, well, I think it would be simply awesome. And in addition to that, it was of course during the Sonisphere 2014 appearance that the infamous Phantom of the Opera pyro malfunction took place, which in reality was just a small production hiccup, yet which Bruce Dickinson was actually able to turn into a show, once again showcasing why he is one of the greatest frontmen in the history of metal. As Iron Maiden's manager Rod Smallwood said, since Maiden decided to return to Europe, they knew they simply had to bring the Run For Your Lives tour home once again. But at the same time, there was a dilemma. How the flip do you top the London Stadium show that took place in 2025? And if you go back with the same show once again, well, you can't really downgrade, right? And so this time around, they decided to return to one of the most legendary music venues in England, yet for the very first time do so not as a part of a huge festival, but as a solo date. Which, by the way, if they will pull off, and I'm sure they will actually become the largest solo performance Iron Maiden have ever given in their career. And by the way guys, if you're planning to attend that show and you want to rock some Metal Pilgrim merch to represent our community, just know that I'll be more than happy to send it pretty much anywhere across the world, and you can order it via a link in the description to this video. And of course, just as expected, Iron Maiden will do everything they do on each stop of that tour, but do it bigger, rolling out the biggest Eddie dive bars ever, lots of Maiden themed entertainment, and a lot of other things during that one-day event, which is basically a Maiden festival. And I actually believe that with that show, Iron Maiden are somewhat testing out a new format for their future tours. Tours which will most likely not feature gazillion dates all over the world, but will rather concentrate on gigantic appearances, similar to what Metallica does in every city they go to on their M72 tour. And if that is actually the case, well, then Iron Maiden will actually have to make it a truly extraordinary event for all of their diehard fans. And thus it would be the best possible place for the many surprises. Whether it is inviting some of their former members to join them on stage, may it be Blaze Bayley, Dennis Stratton or Doug Simpson, or featuring the legendary Nico McBrain return to that place on stage that truly belongs to him. Whether it will be Bruce Dickinson flying an airplane, or the band honoring Ozzy Osbourne, the other fallen heroes of heavy metal, or their former bandmates. Whatever it may be, Knebworth has always had a very special relationship with Iron Maiden. And I am more than sure that given the fact that Iron Maiden are advertising the show as a very special event on this very special Run For Your Lives tour, and given the fact that despite all the rumors, they decided to not invite their lifelong friends and the bands of the same caliber to that show, they might actually do something else that will make all of us talk about that concert for months after it happens. Or at least I hope so. But anyways, what do you guys personally think about Iron Maiden at Knebworth? And are you planning to attend that show next year? Please let us know in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, guys, and we will prevail. Slava Ukraini!